Hello, and welcome to A Slight Chance of Adventure, a Pathfinder First Edition campaign diary podcast. My name is Tyler. I was the DM of this campaign, and with me, for the first time, I've got two players. Gavin,
Hello, I played Shanla.
and for the first time, Tom.
Hello, I played Orcus.
Last time, the party headed over to Maleku to meet with the leader of the Majid Druids, Gamal, only to find he had been kidnapped. They followed the kidnapper into the Blight and defeated him, capturing him. His name was Iberus. He was a shifter with the ability to turn into a giant wolverine. They captured him, freed Gamal, and then continued out of the Blight to Little Avasar, where Gamal met with Druin. And then the party headed back to Wanatuma, to the town of Arbell, to wait for a meeting that is being planned between all of the leaders of the various islands. So, before we get into anything, Tom, it's your first time here.
Yeah, I'm here.
Hey,
thanks.
So, do you remember how you felt about the campaign in Orcus, maybe at the start or up until now?
Up until this point, I didn't fully know what I wanted to do with him as a story. I think throughout the campaign, he kind of goes through the classic hero's journey in a way.
Right.
But
Also, we are all very fresh. This entire group.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, this was my first character that really had like proper combat, where I wasn't just casting a spell or hitting someone. So.
Well, no, this was your. I guess you did do a bit with Gavin before, didn't you? Yeah.
Yes, the fabled Gavin games.
Yes. Tell that tale some other time.
We don't talk about those.
Yes, horrors beyond our comprehension and all. So yeah, we pick up with you guys. You wake up in Arbell in the whiskey farm. Still love that name. The first thing that happens is Shanla went to speak with Tuzma about the coming meeting between all the leaders. Now, do you remember how you guys were feeling about this meeting before, or maybe in retrospect?
I think we discussed getting them all to work together against the Blight or some shit like that.
Yeah, I think that was definitely discussed.
Our general plan.
Yeah.
Out of character, we were like, "Oh, here comes the big ass lore dump."
Oh yeah, wait, it was quite a lore dump. We'll get into that. Yeah. So yeah, you guys spent some time around town. Elika apparently bathed in a bathhouse and bought a dress. Fierce got some new banjo strings because he broke them. There's Orcus bought some supplies.
Yep.
So Orcus, Fierce, and Shanla, you guys all went to speak with a guy named Joso, who was tied to a town on Tuval, which is the place where Orcus is from, the island.
Yeah.
Joso is from a town there that's kind of like detached itself from the whole slave trade that most of Tuval relies on. And so he was the only person from Tuval that was actually at this meeting at this time.
This meeting.
Yeah. And so you were essentially going to meet with him to just because this was your first time you're going to meet him.
Yeah.
And I think you were trying to get him to agree to something or just figure out who he was. And this is when Shanla, I think one of the first times Shanla really used her looks and stuff. She walked into the bar and flaunted her stuff.
Right. I did the Shanla, or what did I call it? I basically kicked open the doors.
Yeah.
The look at me moment.
Yes. It's that thing where, where in all the cowboy movies where they barge through the door and everyone turns around.
Yeah.
Except this time with badonkers.
Now, while speaking to Joso this time, those of you here, and the party, the players as a whole, learned who Orcus's father was. His name is, at this point, you're going to learn the title, I think, the Master of Chains. And
yeah.
Which I think Joso was a little about having Orcus around, but that's part of it. You guys coming to meet him was to get him to agree to have Orcus. Essentially, what was happening in the meeting was you guys were being divided up as representatives of different islands, kind of based on where you were tied to, and they wanted Orcus to be like on the Tuval, the side of the meeting. And they had to get Josa to agree to that. And so that happened. You meet back up with Elika. And then you go divide up to do what I just said, meet with the various representatives.
Yeah.
Yeah, Elika and Fierce go to speak with Gamal and Druin. Shanla, you go to Tuzma, because you were kind of just included onto one or two, even though you didn't come from there.
I'm here too, guys.
Yeah. You also met Sarla, who was a member of Arcturus worshippers on like she was the leader of, at least on Wanatuma, of the Arcturus worshippers followers.
Did we explain who Arcturus is?
We've explained, yeah, giant colorful dragon, god of nature.
Yeah.
Remember that for later.
Yes. And Elika, apparently... Oh, I skipped this. Elika, so you guys had captured Ibris, right?
Yeah.
How much do you remember of Ibris, Tom?
I remember Fierce's player wanted to try to redeem him, but he was not a redeemable person.
Yeah. Well, this was the start of that. Elika, because it was figured out that Ibris used to be a member of the Maja Druids and then just like disappeared into the jungle one day, and they found out what happened to him, and Elika wanted to talk to him, and I recall Ibris essentially just went like, "No, I won't talk to you. You're not the person who beat me. You're not strong. Fuck you."
Yeah.
Right. He was special.
Apparently, Orcus spent some time getting questioned by Joso. Do you remember this, Tom?
I remember there was like a discussion between the two of us alone, but
okay,
I don't really remember what went on between the two of us.
Right.
Yeah, we are like talking about things that happened like 3 years ago now.
Yeah,
this is what, 2019, 2020.
Now, you might remember this next part a little better. Do you guys remember the first meeting? Because I sure do.
I remember it was like a discussion of we should help, but how should we help? But we should help, but how? But we don't have the money, we don't have the resources, but we should help. That's what I got from it.
Oh yeah, right. We had to convince like people from out of town to like help evacuate people, and
essentially yes. So there were some people from here. I'll list off the exact members of this meeting now. There was people who were kind of tied to Calo, the island of Calo, were a lot of people from Historia. Various representatives from the powerful forces on the island that have people from Historia that have interests in the Wakatabi Arbell. From Mistorar, there was a guy named Jabez Farlow. From Barhara, was a guy named Arnor Wallace. Alathis was Carno Darkwater. Now none of these guys really come up again. On Cal, also representing Calo itself, was a gnome named Trigmcarl. And then from Tuval was Orcus, and also the town is called Perico, that Josa is from. And then Wanatuma, there's Tuzma, Sarla, and Rohim. Rohim is the mayor of Arbell.
I went with Tuzma, right?
Yes, you were on the Maleku side, or not the Maleku, the Wanatuma side.
Yeah.
And then from Maleku, there was Elika, and also Fierce were there, and then also there was Druin and Gamal. Now, I remember you guys telling me once that you didn't mind these meetings, right? You didn't. You thought it was all right. You thought it was kind of cool. Mm-hmm. These meetings were terrible for me. I hated. I was so. It was so terrible for me. Because I went in with like. Essentially, I like wrote down like all the different priorities of the different people, but I kind of just assumed I'd like figure out what people say and somehow keep track of all the voices. So like I went into this thing like, okay, I'll do this. And then the moment the meeting started, I went, fuck, I can't do this. And immediately just started summarizing things instead of doing voices.
Well, the problem is that you have to have a full ass conversation with yourself.
Yeah. So like a warning to beginner DMs: try to avoid having conversations between where a bunch of different NPCs are supposed to be talking to each other. Just
unless
summarize
you have
those.
Personality disorder, then just use all of those.
But if generally you just want to summarize those things, because it's fucking impossible to keep track of that many different voices and interactions, and also it's not that interesting to the players if you actually do it because it's just like the end talking to themselves.
Yeah.
Usually, if you have a group, have one person of their group be talking to you guys.
Yeah, that's a really good way to do it. Is you just like have a representative kind of from both sides. But yeah,
unless you're Matthew Mercer, but never take Matthew Mercer as an example of how to run your games.
It's
that's
the result
not
of
a negative way, but
so there were a couple there was one particularly interesting thing that happened in this meeting, which was everybody else found out who Orcus's father was. This was of particular interest to Druin, who is like a member of Anti-Slave, the pirate gang, right? The leader of it. And so, super anti-slave. And he finds out that Orcus's dad is like one of the head honchos of the slave trade. and I remember Druin was just like, I had him right there, because he captured you guys at the start of the campaign. Had him right there. And then he kind of just like shook his head like, my goodness, I can't believe it.
Fucking ransom, death, amount of shit I had there if I had just known.
Yeah. But then, because this meeting was like, I didn't really know what to do. I was like out of my depth, just panicking the whole time. I kind of just like, things just worked out. I was just like, yeah, you raised some good points, and they agree. They agreed to try and help somehow. I don't think the specifics were worked out in this, but they were like, we'll try and help.
I think Shanla made the point of like, it would look pretty bad in the history books if you guys were just like, yeah, we knew the destruction was coming, but we said fuck those guys.
Right, yeah. So apparently after the meeting...
At global warming.
yes. You went to Hintella with Tuzma. Elika finally got her Masterwork Spear. And then something else that happened as a result of this meeting is it kind of agreed upon what you guys would do next. Which was, you had spotted a island that was like still green in the middle of the Blight area. Like there was a lake, and you could raise this at the meeting. And they had been like, well, we should probably look into that, right? Yeah, we should probably look into that. And so you guys agreed, okay, well, after that, we'll go do that.
We'll look into it. Right.
Yeah, well...
More like, you guys will look into it.
Sorry, I meant you guys, as in we.
Yeah.
Anyway,
we ended up having to do it, essentially, by being voluntold.
Yeah.
Well, we got paid for it. It was
you were paid.
You were paid. We did.
What we usually do.
It's not volunteer work.
Job.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I imagine Orcus probably felt like he was voluntold. Yes, he was still in a difficult situation at this point. So you make your way over to Maleku. You must have got some canoes, and you brought them over to the Maja Grove. You rested in the Maja Grove. Elika spoke to her friend Mira at this point, and at this point you guys had gotten like a good chunk of money from like various things you've done.
Yeah.
And Elika's just handed like Mira like 1,000 gold, or like 100 gold, but which was a lot. Like she just gave her a crap ton of money, and said, "Go do something with this."
What did she do with that gold?
I think she latered on butt jewelry. We'll mention that more later.
Okay.
Fierce and Orcus portaged the canoes through the jungle and through the Blight to the middle of the Blight and the Sludge Lake. Somehow, I think you guys made like stealth checks. You got like really high stealth checks, so you just got through into the Blight without trouble. And then you guys rowed the canoes, because the reason you were portaging these things was to get them to this lake so you could cross the lake, because the lake was sludge. Yeah. It was not really a lake, it was sludge. And you had to paddle across this thing, or more like pull yourself across this thing through the sludge on these canoes. I remember there was some things made about who was faster, Orcus or Fierce, paddling across. There was also mention that you guys saw like little bits of movement in the sludge. And worried you guys?
It was fine. I wasn't worried.
Yeah. It was like, hey, there's a thing here that might that's under there. It's like, oh shit, that means we're probably gonna get attacked.
And again, this island was green. There was still plant life on this. In the middle of the Blight, there was still this green, pretty island, which was weird. So you guys explored.
I imagine there's just like a greenhouse in the middle of Chernobyl.
Yeah, essentially.
Just walking.
Yeah. And so you guys search the island. You find various loot and various skeletons. And what you guys figure out was that this is essentially the last holdout of a number of like ancestors of the Maja druids who had like been here when the Blight first emerged, and they'd like pulled up on this island, and so you find some loot here. Various magic. Orcus gets a spell storing weapon, a sword. The one thing that's cool is they get a Summon Nature's Ally 4, which was like a fair bit higher than any spells you guys cast at this point.
Yeah. Do we ever use
you did later. You did later, yes. And there's two very important things you found here, though. One, you found a little girl's corpse, or skeleton, with a journal.
Yeah. Of the little girl, right? Yeah.
And then I'll read out roughly what was written. Mommy got me this journal. She wants me to write in it. A bunch of different... and then I summarize a bunch of different entries describing playing with friends, visiting the town, getting in trouble with her parents, and learning how to do village work, right? So it's like, oh, okay, this was like a living place in the middle of the Blight. Because you've previously found like village ruins in the Blight. This like dead part of Blight.
Yeah.
And then after that, written in the journal, is monsters came from the Grey Forest. We went to Arcturus' island, so you learn that this island was important somehow. Mm-hmm. The whole world is shaking. The monsters won't leave. The other people want food. People are getting mad. Mommy told me to hide. I'm so hungry is the last entry.
And man, is that sad.
Yeah, it was very sad. But then, cradled with this little girl was something else, something pretty important. A shard of creation, which was just like this. Well, do you guys remember the shards?
Yes.
I remember, yeah.
They're really shiny crystals that was like...
And up and coming, the biggest mistake in the campaign.
Essentially the opposite of the Blight itself.
Yeah, well, they would like a counterpoint to these the orbs you guys had finding, like the void orbs. Or beads, void beads, because you found a couple of those before, and now you found this, and so you started to be like, okay, well, there's this, which is this like shard that like you realized held like Arcturus's energy, like divine energy in it, and you kind of realized the beads had like Apollion's energy kind of trapped in them, and so you collected this, and you were like, okay, well, this is pretty important. We should probably get this back, but that's where we ended the session. All right, so for this post-episode discussion, clearly we should probably talk about Orcus, seeing as this is your first time here.
Hello.
So, who was Orcus? Where did he come from? How do you remember that?
Orcus, the origin of it was, I had this idea of sort of a tough guy, like... Yeah, I'm gonna be strong. I'm gonna be like beat up people with it, and yeah, that's where like the original idea came from. And then as we learned about like, hey, where can that kind of person come from? Mm-hmm. Like that sort of hardened, sort of dickhead,
right,
come from? And evidently, ex-slave is a pretty good backstory.
He slotted in very well, into that spot.
Yeah.
How much do you remember about, like... Oh, go ahead, Kevin.
I was about to say, like, surprisingly, slavers are just not up on the high tier of nice people and people you want to hang out with.
Yeah.
No, yeah. And it was sort of interesting how, like, even from the first session, he immediately got confronted with the consequences of slavery. With, like, the first session, you know, the ex-slave pirates.
Yeah.
Who, while they are... they're like definitely have the moral high ground, are still technically pirates.
Yeah, no, they did some. the way the Ivory Fang generally operated was they would be absolutely brutal against enslaved trade ships, and then like they'd take supplies as needed from other people. Generally, like, their targets would be like, okay, the way they justify it would be like, well, these guys aren't doing that much about the slave trade, so like, I think they're kind of in the wrong too. If they're not doing that much. So their target priority would go people from Tuval, people from Kalau, and then people from Wanatuma. So that's why they had okay relations with Wanatuma, because they didn't attack Wanatuma that much. And then pretty much everybody hated slavers. Although they had some contacts on Kalau as well, because Kalau likes money. But yeah, so that is a slaver. And how do you remember Orcus in like retrospect, without too many spoilers?
In retrospect, looking at him, he really throughout play, he kind of represented a sort of classic idea of like being a man, because a lot of time, because while obviously being confronted with all these things would make a person like think about it, he never voiced those concerns with anyone.
He very often got called the brooding.
Yeah, he got called brooding, and while I was like, no, he's not brooding, he was brooding, essentially. He was pushing down all those thoughts.
He's not brooding. Stands on top of Gargoyle, lightning behind him.
Yeah. He would...
Right.
Yeah. He would push that, like, cognitive dissonance of, I'm a slave, I'm trying to do, like... I'm the bad guy. I'm doing the right thing right now. So it's like push all that issues from the past down and just not deal with them right now.
Right. Gavin, do you have any particular memories of Orcus?
I remember Shanla bullied Orcus a lot.
He did.
It was, yes, Shanla...
She was the lead bully when it came to...
She was relentless.
But like, she's the type to bully out of love.
She like also tended to be the most likely to go to bat for him too. To be fair,
yes.
Yeah. She stuck up for him a lot.
Yeah,
that did happen. Yes,
that is true.
Because you're not currently a slaver. If you were currently a slaver, I would totally let you get like run over by a mob.
Because remember when we were hunting those void beasts early in the campaign, like we had a person that was walking under Druin who was a hunter who just did not care about shooting me instead of the beast that I was in combat with.
Yeah.
And then Jean-Luc called her out on that shit.
Yeah.
It's like he's doing work for you. He's atoning, essentially. This whole campaign is atonement for him.
But she warmed up to you, right?
Barcel?
I don't think she did.
She accepted his role essentially in things. She
didn't like super hate you anymore.
She was like, fine, I'm good. She decided to be professional. This is what she did. Well, that's probably the end of the episode. See everybody later. Bye.
Goodbye.
Thanks for having me.